Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Harika. So as a part of web UI automations, it is that we are going through. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how to do a web automation, especially the login part. Because in every automation, we will have multiple things, but logging in is one thing which is very common with any kind of application. So why I have chosen to show you login, because throughout the process I would show you what are the different activities that we use. Okay, so let me take a notepad. So in this video, you're going to learn how to log in into a web application. So during this process, I would explain you multiple activities. So the first one is open browser, and the second one is maximize window. And after that, we will see element exist activity. And later I will talk about type into, type secure text, and click. So these are the multiple different types of activities. So what I mean by different types of activities, if you go to activities panel, so if you just type for open browser, so if you see here, the open browser is under browser activities. Okay, and maximize window, this comes under window activities, right? So in the same way, element exists, so this comes under element activities. So under element, under find, we have element exist activities. So type into keyboard activity. So in the same way, we are going to see this type secure text is also keyboard activity, and click is a mouse activity. So these are the different types of activities that we are going to look into, and we will try to understand how we can use them in our process, and also what are the different properties that we have, also we will look into this. Okay, so for that, first of all, let me take a new sequence and say login browser or login module. Okay, so yes, so we got this. After that, what I'm going to do, I wanted to first open a browser, right? So for that, I'm going to take open browser activity. So if you just observe, for any of the activities, what's the first thing that you have to do is explore the properties panel. So if you just click on it, on the right hand side, you can see the properties panel, right? So what is the input and what is the output are the two main crucial things that you have to consider. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to open browser. So if you see here, we have browser type. So UiPath supports all these browsers which are available in this drop down. Okay, so by default, when if you don't provide any of these values, it will be opening in a IE browser. Okay, so I'm going to go for Chrome, and what is the URL that you want the browser to go to navigate into? So that's the URL over here. Just give me a second. I will have to pick the URL that we are going to do the automation on. So I would be pausing the screen. Okay, I got my URL. So this is the excuse me, so this is the application that we are using in order to just get some hands-on on how to do login. So I will leave the link in the description, so you can just create one account. So as you don't have an account, what you can do, you can just click on sign up for test, and this will take you here. You just have to provide your details. It will send a verification link to your mail ID, and then your account will be created, so that we can just use this particular application to log in. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to log in into this application. So first of all, before you do any of the automation, first try to think what are the manual steps that you have to do. So here, if you just observe, we open this particular URL, right? So this is the URL that we have to point to. And then let me go over here. So I'm going to paste this URL in between double quotes. Okay, right, got it. So this is the open browser. This will open my particular web page. Okay, so after that, this UI browser is, if you just observe here, the result of the activity is the UI browser object. So why this is used, we will see in the future videos in the little more complex scenarios, but for now you just have to understand. Let's say if I create any variable here, so what's the shortcut for creating variable? Control K, and I'm going to create a variable browser output. So now I don't know what is the data type that it returns. So what I can do, I can just check under the variables. So if you see, the variable type is of type uipath.code.browser, right? This is the return type. So let's say if you create a variable, you have to make sure that you select this particular variable type if you know the variable type. Otherwise, you can just create it over here. Okay. So that's one thing. So we have taken open browser, right? So after that, let me so this will help you to open this particular application. So I'm going to close this. So let my automation run and open this application. So I have selected the browser type as Chrome. So the Chrome will be open and the particular application will be, it will be redirected to. Okay, so basically it has opened in a maximized window, correct? So let's say if I'm having my window like this, and let's say if it is like this, then there is one issue that we may face. So if my automation has to click on login button, so it cannot see it on the screen, right? So in order to do that, we have to maximize this. So we have an activity that is used for maximizing, which is maximize window. Okay, okay, so I'm just pulling that activity inside the do block. So if you just see here, whatever the activities that or whatever the actions that we have to perform after opening the browser, that should go inside this sequence. Okay, so this is a sequence. Okay, so it, after opening the browser, it has to maximize the window. Let me do this. So it's running and it got maximized, right? So fine. So after maximizing the window, what I'm going to do is the question. So let me go to this and type into. So we have already seen type into in the previous examples, like how to type into a certain text box and everything we have seen. But now I'm going to explain you a realistic scenario. Okay, I just opened because I have to capture the selector. Okay, in this, let me uncomment it. So what's the shortcut key for uncommenting is Control E. You have to also keep a track on the shortcuts that you're using, because that's very important when you're doing the coding. It will help you to, you know, do the things a little quick. And so I am going to type into, let me go to this. Yeah, I'm going to type into email address, right? So I have to point to the text box field and I have to click here. So that will capture my selector. But as we've already discussed in the previous videos, how to stabilize a selector, I'm going to open it in a UI Explorer, and then I have to do some checks, what I have to include and what I don't have to include, and then I will stabilize my selector. Okay, so if you see, ID is like this. So this CT100 CTL00 may be changing or may be constant. I'm not sure about it right now. So to make sure, what I have to do, let me refresh the page and go to Explorer and validate. So it seems fine. It seems the same thing is there. So let it be. That's not a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do here, let me take a input text. Fine, it's like a class text box. And do we have anything like username or something of that kind? Then it will be more secure. Okay, so if you see here, it's a parent ID is PNL login. Okay, and here it says user login, right? What is it? Name. So better take this selector, because it seems like user login, so maybe this would be corresponding to the username. Okay, let's validate this. If you want to cross check one more time, what you can do, just refresh the page so that you can understand if the selectors are constant or not, and then you can validate. If you see, it's not a valid selector, right? Let's see why it is so. Let me highlight it. Okay, so if you see here, we have taken name, right? So something was changing with respect to the selector. Okay, and I'm highlighting it. I wanted to do a cross check again. Okay, this has come up. The UI element is no longer valid. Okay, so there is something changing with respect to the class after I added it up, right? So so this is how you can do the validation, and you can just cross check it. Okay, so let this be. This is highlighting my user user login, so this is fine. So just copy this, or you can just save it. That will be saved into your editor window, and then say okay, fine. But what is the text that you have to type it here? Okay, so what is the text that comes is your mail ID or whatever your username. Okay, so I'm giving my mail ID. But before to this, you just have to do a validation. Like, let's say you have you have opened the browser, you've maximized the window, but let's say if the page is not landed exactly. Okay, or else let's go with a positive scenario first. After that, I will explain you the negative scenario. Okay, what we have to do here is, like, we are typing into the text, right? And then let me go for typing into the password. Okay, so for the password, most preferably we will be using a secure password. Okay, so why we have to use a secure password? Because it's in order to maintain the confidentiality of the information that we use. Okay, so for password, I'm going to use type secure text. So if you just observe here, so these are almost the same, but for type secure text, it will accept only the secure string. It doesn't take the normal string. If you see here, okay, let me take or cut this value and create a variable here. So I'm taking a variable username. It's of type string, and I'm giving the value over here. Okay, and provide the value username. Fine. So let's create a value called password. Okay, so change the value. So if you just provide the value here as a password, and there comes the exception, right? Because password is of a type string and it takes only the secure string, correct? So for that, we have to change the variable type as secure string. Let's change this to secure string. Okay, system dot security dot secure string. So this is the one. If you're not sure like what type of variable that goes in over here, so I will tell you a shortcut wherein you can just type here your variable. You can just create the variable here by giving the control K. That will also do the same thing. Okay, so once that is done, what we have to do, we have to indicate the element inside the browser. So here is the place where my password has to go. So my password will be going here, right? Let's check the selector again. Okay, it shows password. So fine, I think this is good. And then say okay. And then what we have to do after doing that, we have to click on login. Fine. So what is to do that? We have to have a click activity. Just pull in that click activity here and indicate that element. Right. So let's validate the selector again. So it shows button, login button, right? And also submission, it's of type submission. So this is highlighted. I'm saying okay. So we are good. We have created a activity to have typing into the username and then the password, which is of the type secure, and then the login. But we haven't provided the password yet. So how we can do that? Here, if you just observe, we are having the password. There's a different way that you can actually pass a secured string, right? So let me show you how we can do that. So for that, what you have to do, just have to create, there's a syntax that you have to follow. New system dot net dot network credentials. Okay, so this is a syntax that you have to follow. You have to give two double quotes and then a comma, and then inside the double quotes here your password goes. Okay, so what's the password? You just give whatever the password is yours, and I'm going to give my password here, and the whole thing has to be converted into a secure password. Okay, right? I will give you this thing as well in the description so that it will be easy for you. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to create a by using the new variable system.net.network credential. This is a syntax that is used to pass the secure string. Okay, so we are using this is my password that I'm passing, or else basically what happens, we don't pass the password directly, we don't hard code the password directly here in this way. Usually it either comes from assets or config file or from credential manager, I can say. So but as this is a basics video, I cannot involve all these concepts here, which will be confusing for you. So that's why I have passed it directly just with a small syntax. Okay, so for time being you can remember this, and if later once after I teach you assets, after that I will take this value from assets. Okay, so for now it's a hard coded value. So once that's done, we have provided username, password, and we are going to click on login. So for that, I am about to introduce some properties for you. So let's say simulate click. Okay, so I'm going to explain in detail about simulate click and send window message in the future videos, but for now try to enable the simulate click so that whatever the clicks that we are doing, that will be clicked properly even though the process is running in the background. Okay, that's a small explanation for time being. So I'm closing it and I'm debugging the file. So it's getting executed. Okay, it shows incorrect username and the password. So now what I'm going to do, when it was running, I just moved my cursor a little bit. So what we can do is, there's one more property called wait for ready, which is complete. Okay, so we will be talking about these properties in detail in the future videos, but in order to not leave you with zero knowledge, what I'm going to do here is, so this property is basically used. So let's say my browser has been opened and I'm in this application. So if it is taking a little time to load, type into activity will understand that I have to wait until the loading will be completed, until the page gets loaded completely. So that's the reason why we're using wait for ready as complete. Okay, and let me keep this also complete. Okay, so let's debug this again and check. And also make sure that you don't move your cursor when the process is running, because basically whatever the automations that we do with UI. So if you see here, now the type into has waited until the perform action has been performed, and it has clicked on login. We could able to log in into the application, right? So this is how it's done. So now what I'm going to do here is, let me close this. We are already logged in, right? And I'll try to run this workflow again. And now you will see what exactly the issue will happen. So if you see, we're trying to load the page, and here it is already logged in, right? We don't have an email ID or the username or the password text boxes to enter into. So now what happens? The robot will fail, right? It will throw an exception saying it cannot find the UI element because the elements are not there on the application. Even though if we have gone to the right page, as we've already logged in, so it cannot find the particular web element, right? So if you see here, it has thrown an exception. So if you see, type into cannot find the corresponding selector, right? This selector is not available. So in order to avoid this kind of exception, what we do is, we have to do a pointers. Okay, we have to keep some pointers. Okay, so what is it? Let me take one more activity which is called as element exist. Okay, let me take this activity and keep it over here before we actually type into our username. Okay, so I'm taking element exist activity, and what I have to check for, I have to check for the email address, if this particular text box is there or not. So what is the selector for this? I can just directly copy it from here, right? I can copy and I'll just go here and then I'll just paste it. Okay, so I'm checking if this particular email address selector is there or not. That means if I am there on the login page or not. That's what we are validating, right? So here just go to the, this element exist will provide you an output. Okay, so with respect to that output, what I have to do is, I'll just have to create a variable, and that variable will provide me a boolean value. Okay, so to check if if you are in login page. Okay, so if you just see here, this is the value that I've created, and go to variables, and this is of type boolean. So this login page value will be true if you are in really in the login page. This value will be false if you are in this page already. If we are in the home page, this value will be false. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do, I'm saying a if condition, conditional statement, and I'm passing it over here. And also you have to remember one more thing. Let's keep this under element exist. We have wait for ready, right? So let's make it complete so that it will wait until the page gets loaded completely, and then it will check for the element exist. Okay, and after this, what are the actions that we are going to perform? So if the value, if we are in the login page, if this value is true, right? If this value is true, that means we are going to perform the login. So pull all the login activities, which are typing in username, typing in password, and clicking on the login button into the sequence. So if you see, a sequence got generated over here, right? Okay. Let me pull it inside. So this is the sequence that gets executed if you're in the login page. Okay, two sequences got generated. So I'm just cutting this, deleting, and then dropping the activities here again. So what is happening? We are logging in. Otherwise, we don't have a selector to log in, right? So we are not going to do that action. So let me close this and debug the file. It is started executing. It went into, it just directed to the test account, and then it is now trying to search for the particular web element, which is email address, right? So here I wanted to introduce something to you. If you just see here, we have multiple properties, right? For element exist, we are having multiple properties. So we have enabled wait for ready as complete. That means it will wait until the whole web page gets loaded completely, and then it will take a step, yes or no, right? In the same way, okay, if you see, the bot has not broken. I'll talk about it later, but before that, I just want to finish this up. So here, if you observe, we have something called as timeout, correct? So this timeout is something that by default, the timeout value will be 30 seconds. So the robot will come here. It will check if this particular web element, which is email ID, is present or not for 30 seconds. So after 30 seconds only, it will give you the a true or false boolean value. Okay, so if you just observe here, it has taken 39 seconds to check if that particular element is there or not. So this is customized by us. So let's say if the application is very slow and if it's taking 1 hour or 1 whole minute to load, then you can keep it as 60 seconds. Okay, so it is basically in the milliseconds, so you can just keep it as a 60,000 milliseconds. So in my case, I don't wanted to wait for such a long time, because I already have wait for ready as complete. That means the search will start after the page gets loaded. So my web application is fast, so I don't wanted to wait for 30 seconds to come up to a conclusion whether it's there or not. So what I'm going to do, I'll just give a 2 seconds. So 2 seconds means 2000 milliseconds, right? So now we will execute the same workflow, and we can see the previous one took 39 seconds, and let's see how this one will take this much, how much time that this workflow will take after changing the timeout. So if you just observe, the process has already finished the execution. It took only 11 seconds. In the previous case, it took 39 seconds, right? So that's how we can manage the time that it takes for automation as well. So if you don't give any time, it will take 30 seconds by default. Okay, so I hope this is clear for you. The element exists, and if there are any properties that I have left out, I will try to cover them in future videos, because if I tell everything now, that would take up a lot of your thinking and ability. So now let's go into the next one. So yeah, we ended up here, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'll do the logout, and now let's check how much it is working and if it's true or not. Let's take a log message. So basically we can use log message or write line or message box. These are the activities that we can use to check the the messages that the bot is giving us. So I'll give you login page just as an info. We will talk more about this debug activities later in future videos, but for now, if I just take it over here, I can see that in the console if it's a true or false. Okay, so I'm doing the debug. So we are in the home page. It's trying to log in and it has to click on the login page. Correct. So it has entered into the login page. Now, if you see here, it's true, right? So this is all in this video. I'll give you an assignment that I want you to do so that you will get understanding on how to do it. Okay, so till now we are good, right? We have gone into the open the application, maximized, and then did logging in. And after logging in, I want you to do one thing. So here, if you just observe, after login, what is the action that's happening? So here we have multiple scenarios. Let's say if there is a scenario where you have entered incorrect password. Okay, I want you to check if that is an incorrect password. Okay, let me provide it the scenario over here. So let's say it's a logout. I'm doing a logout. And now let's say I'm giving something and something. Okay, I'm doing login. So you have to capture this particular element. Okay, and you have to provide in a text or a log message saying that this is an incorrect username or password. Okay, so let's say if you have logged in successfully, that's a different scenario, right? So you have to divide the flow into two different things by using all the activities that we have seen till now. And if this is the message that it is coming up, so let's say if I'm giving Harika or, and if the password is something, then what is the message? It says it both doesn't match or something of that kind, right? So what you have to do is you just have to create a flow which is a continuation of this. After you click on the login button, you have to capture if there is a text. Okay, and you have to provide a different flow. Otherwise, if it's a successful login, you have to provide a different flow. At the end of both the flows, you have to give me a message using a log message saying that if you have ended up giving a wrong password or you have given the right password and able to log in. So these are the different things that you have to give. So whenever I come and try with this bot, if I give the wrong credentials, it has to go as per that flow. If I give the right credentials, it has to take me to the login page. So that's what I expect from this assignment. So that thing I'm going to cover in the next video, but till then I want you to try and I want you to come up with some solution. And also I would like to ask few questions which I have already mentioned throughout the video. So the first question is, what is the default timeout value in seconds? Okay, and the next question is, what is the default type of the browser? Okay, and also what is the return type of open browser, return type of output variable of open browser activity? So I want you to answer all these three questions because that's what we are learning for, right? So this shows how attentive you are when I was telling something throughout the video. So if you get the right answers, if you think that you got the right answers, do let me know in the comment section and I will check all your comments. And if there is something wrong, I'll try to respond back to that. Thank you so much for watching. And you know the assignment, right? You just have to create two different flows, and how the output comes, that has to be shown on the output panel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you with the solution in the next video.